Hi, my name is Heejin. I live in Washington State. I'm Korean.
I am Mars. I am from Queens, New York. I am Filipino American.
I'm Oko from Chicago, Illinois. I'm Indian and Japanese.
I'm Abby. I'm from California, USA. My pronouns are they, them.
My pronouns are they and them.
Pronouns are they, them.
And I am non-binary.
I am non-binary.
And I'm non-binary.
I think the textbook definition for a lot of people that's very common is you do not align with the gender that you were assigned at birth.
Officially, being non-binary means that you don't subscribe to the binary. And binary is a 0-1 system or an either-or system. In terms of gender, is male or female. So if you exist anywhere outside of that, you're considered non-binary.
It's essentially an umbrella term for a gender identity. It's not to be confused with sexual orientation, because in my video last year, there were a lot of people that were new to queer language and were confused. So someone can be non-binary and whatever other sexual orientation. And ultimately, being non-binary can mean different things for the non-binary identifying person.
You don't have to change yourself to be non-binary. How do you feel about yourself? How you are referred to? What are you the most comfortable with? That's what it is for me personally. I didn't have to change anything about my physical appearance to be okay with my body, but I did have to change how people were referring to me as, especially growing up, being sexualized almost as soon as you hit puberty. And I hated it. I really hated it. I've had people say things like, you talk like a girl, you walk like a girl, you're a girl. That is not necessarily true.
Especially growing up in an Asian American household, there were these really defined male and female roles. For me, it really just means imagining something outside of a really strict gender binary that I grew up with. I've had friends who have identified as non-binary for a while. At first, I had a lot of trouble understanding so what are you if you're not this? But I feel like through my friends I learned that it's about freedom and it's about creativity, just imagining a different future than maybe the ones that we grew up with.
I don't think that you have to fit into any sort of box to be non-binary. That's what it really means for me, just not fitting into any boxes, just being authentically yourself. No one else's opinions, no one else's judgments, no one else's standards apply to you. The only thing that matters is yourself.
And there's a common misconception that non-binary equates to androgyny, which isn't the case. For me personally, I have always admired androgyny, but there may be some days where I may present more feminine or I may present more masculine, or it really varies. And for me, fluidity is such an important thing when it comes to my gender expression and identity. Being non-binary means a greater sense of freedom and authenticity. It's brought me closer to myself and how I present myself and how I am perceived by others. And I think for others, it opens up discussions and new or different ways of thinking. For example, taking a gender identity class in university was a big part of my gender identity journey because it basically summed up a lot of what I was already observing growing up.
To me, never felt like I was all one or all the other. And give me a second, Moose is eating some plastic. Never meant it was more one thing or another, or never felt like I was more one or another. Wherever I, did the thought experiment to sit myself, it just never felt quite right. Though I didn't actually know what that was called until way later. But it always seemed like it applied to someone that wasn't me. Like it was for people who wanted to present as very androgynous or who very much wasn't one or the other and was smack dab in the middle. And because I kind of sit somewhere more towards one side or more towards the other, it just seemed like a term that wasn't for me. The funny thing is the first time it actually registered that it could apply to me was I had another friend who had just started T. And for people who don't know, it's shorthand for testosterone. So people who want to transition from being assigned female at birth to presenting more masculine. I've always thought that would be nice, that I would like that, but I don't want to be a man. There was no part of me that was I want to be a guy, or I want to be a man, or I want to be seen in that way as in that binary definition. And it was I very much still internally identified, I don't want to say as a woman, but definitely not as a man. And she just kind of looked at me and was non-binary is a thing, right? You can transition and still be non-binary. You can present as entirely male and still be non-binary. There's this in between. You don't have to just be one or the other. And it honestly just kind of like blew my mind and sent me into like a giant crisis until I kind of one day was like, you know what, I'm starting tea, and just started.
Being non-binary, I think, helps me think about like all the different ways in which I identify and how that honestly makes me very cool and unique, and also allows me to advocate for people who have similar experiences to me. I see it as like a very beautiful thing. I know that in therapy, when I was starting to explore this with my therapist, I've constantly felt like I was on the edge of a cliff about to fall out. I think when you identify outside of the gender binary, you start to realize how very, very closely hemmed in you have been in many areas of your life, and how the extraordinary lengths that people go to defend this like very antiquated box or pedestal that they put people in. And it's really wild. Like, I really feel like if we could redirect that energy into more inclusiveness and like safe spaces for people, like, I don't know, transphobia, homophobia would be like instantly gone. But unfortunately, people think that introducing the idea of somebody who's not a man or woman is going to like destroy their understanding of everything. But I feel like it's a good destruction, and there is so much joy and peace in identifying outside of these constraints that we've grown up in.
It was on Tumblr, like I think circa 2015, 2016 Tumblr. Oh gosh. Here's the thing with 2015, 2016 Tumblr, I noticed a lot of the people that were like talking about non-binary experiences were like white, conventionally attractive, skinny, and so forth. At least what I was seeing at the time on Tumblr. And my reaction was just like, do I fit in these boxes? Because I don't want to change anything about myself. I'm happy the way I am, but I don't like being referred to as she, her, because being referred to as she, her makes me so uncomfortable. I mean, being perceived kind of just makes me uncomfortable in general, but being perceived as a woman, being perceived as female, it made me, I don't know, it felt wrong. And also he, him also felt wrong, because then I feel like I was expected to, again, conform to what society deems masculine. I was happy with how I was. And of course things change. My like style and preference, how I choose to present, changes over time, but I don't want to have to do that to validate myself as non-binary. So I went by they, them for a while, and I thought maybe this would work. And lo and behold, it did. And I still go they, them to this day. I think I was probably like 21 when I kind of figured it out. So there's no set timeline to figure yourself out. There should never be time restraint on that.
So I actually identified as agender for about a year before I Googled non-binary and realized I actually probably was non-binary. Of course, I didn't have to accept a label that I didn't want to use, but I really felt like it applied to me. And also I think making more Asian non-binary friends really helped show me that there was a lot of gender expression outside of the kind of normative, like white, thin, androgynous body. Learning to divorce, I think, non-binary from androgynous was really helpful for me.
First heard the term online probably on Instagram or YouTube, and I reacted with curiosity, so I did a lot of research, as I do when I come upon something new that I want to learn about. I just gradually started consuming more content from NB people, specifically during the pandemic when we were all isolating, and it was the perfect time to explore. So I did things like therapy and a lot of gender identity work and exploration.
The more you're yourself, the more you get to, I don't know, enjoy your life. It doesn't mean that like everything's great or like all of my problems are gone, but it just means that like I'm carrying less weight, less energy on being me, and more energy on just dealing with life, which is already enough. Like that's that's enough to deal with. I actually went through like a couple of different names when I like first came out. So luckily I had friends who were like really good about pronouns. It took them a while, especially because I think I was the first person that a lot of them knew who was using they, them pronouns, or just pronouns that weren't he or she. And they were really good about like using a new name, pronouns, like changing names when I like finally was like, no, this is actually going to be my name. And like purposely practicing at home when I wasn't there. Honestly, that means so much. It just felt like my life opened up. I mean, at the same time, the transition period where the old me was dying, so I had to like kind of mourn that person. But in terms of like everything I was benefiting, in terms of like being able to be more vulnerable with people, being able to be more myself, being able to like enjoy things with my whole heart and not feel like I was always hiding part of it or feeling like I had to perform a gender role so that people wouldn't think I was weird, instead of just being like, I'm non-binary and there is no role. There's no set role. I get to make that role. And like, you don't have to be non-binary to do that, to completely like kick gender norms, but it was something that I remember like hating the color pink, like hating anything that was feminine, and then like coming out of non-binary being like, no, I kind of don't care like if it's feminine or not, because like I'm okay with where I'm sitting.
I was mainly relieved and excited and motivated that there was a gender identity that aligned with me in the most accurate way, because my whole life I've felt out of place in many different ways, like culturally and socially. From a very young age, I had already started noticing this pattern of very gendered things in society and like what was expected of me because of how I was born, you know? And it was very limiting. Things from parents, from society, from peers. So I quickly grew tired of it. So identifying as non-binary gave me this greater sense of confidence and security and control of my life and myself. I've gradually moved away from she, her, more specifically online, like on Twitch and on my platforms. I think I established quite well that I go by solely they, them now. In real life with my family and friends, that's some work that I still have to do. It has started, and that is how I would like to be called by the people in my life that I care about and who care about me.
I actually only started to really identify as non-binary, I think just a year or two ago. I just finished a graduate program, and I know for the first year of the program, because I was having to meet so many new people, I told people they could use like any pronouns. I was identifying as like genderqueer and agender. I think halfway through my first year, I started to use they, them pronouns, mostly just to be mean to my internship supervisor who like misgendered me constantly. You know, I would never identify as a different gender just to annoy somebody. But I started to really feel like everyone defaulting to she, her was not working for me. And I kind of needed everyone to get on the same page, because when you tell people to use any pronouns, a lot of people will basically tell you what they think of you as. Like I still have friends who use any pronouns, and if they kind of appear to be like more masc, a lot of people use like he, him pronouns. If they appear to be a little bit more femme, people use she, her. How has it affected my life? I feel like it grants me sort of like instant solidarity with other genderqueer people, which I really love. It's been a huge joy finding other folks who are also genderqueer. I feel like before the pandemic, identifying as agender, I still got misgendered a lot by cis queer people. I think even within the queer community, there's still a lot of gatekeeping. There's still a lot of like biphobia, there's still a lot of transphobia, there's a lot of racism. And so I basically found out which of my cis queer friends were actually transphobic, which was not great. And we had lots of talks, lots of conversations. Honestly, the pandemic has given me distance from some of them, which I think has been great. And I can tell that for some of them, you know, their learning has definitely expanded.
Identifying as non-binary really has affected my life because I am the only one in my real life friend group. My social circles all around are all cisgendered people. It's kind of hard, but also it feels great because I can help educate them on things, or they will ask me for advice, and they look at the world differently because they have someone in their personal life that is non-binary and goes strictly by they, them. They have learned to like drop my gender language like as much as they can, and they're more self-aware. Like, not everybody you meet is gonna look so-and-so and be so-and-so. You should drop all the assumptions. But what does suck is that there is still gendered language with my friend groups sometimes, not necessarily always in person. A lot of my friend groups online, because I'm always online. Maybe English is not their first language, so I kind of just, you know, they're used to using slang and calling me like girl and ma'am and miss, or like, you know, queen or so and so, and I'm just uncomfortable with that. I don't know how to like confront them sometimes because I know they don't mean it out of malice. They don't mean it to be mean, but it hurts me. It's nice to be someone that my cis friends can learn from so that their attitudes and behaviors can change. So anyone else in their life that comes out as non-binary or they meet somebody non-binary, they're able to, you know, adjust. And there were also many moments where I thought maybe should I just be they, she instead? But then I realized, I tell myself, I think that thought was only 5 seconds long. I tell myself my comfort is non-negotiable when it comes to my pronouns. It's non-negotiable. If someone is uncomfortable that I had to confront them, that's on them, but it's nothing compared to my discomfort of constantly being called she, her. It's a hurdle that I have to get over myself in correcting people, but not apologizing. I should never have to feel bad for being me.
It did affect me, having Asian, specifically Filipino parents who immigrated from the Philippines. I'm first generation Filipino, which meant they were culturally more conservative. So I was being frequently reminded that I was a girl or a woman. So because of that, I had to behave a certain way, I had to dress a certain way, I had to be a certain way, I had to think and even feel a certain way. So that, and being the firstborn girl of immigrant parents, in addition to their overprotectiveness, I was very, very rebellious when I was a teenager. I do understand my parents now after having lived in a foreign country myself for an extended period of time.
I'm fourth generation Japanese, so like that side is more American than Japanese in terms of like culture. And my dad's side is like very progressive. They kind of don't care as long as you're a good person. It might take them a while and it might be hard and maybe they said stuff behind my back and I don't know about it. But honestly, coming out as non-binary or even trans was easier than I came out as gay. Like that one was harder for them to wrap their head around because I think like since I was a kid, my dad was always like, why are some things girl things and some things boy things? That doesn't make any sense. Just do the stuff you like to do. So I like was one of like 2 girls in a boy baseball league and always played with like Legos and trucks and video games and all those things that are like stereotypically boy things. But I would say like outside of my family, other Asian families, especially other Indian families, were kind of confused by me even before I came out as non-binary because I wasn't like performing specifically like the ideal girl role. And I think I always had the feeling that I was not accepted or seen as like possibly a bad influence until like setting their kids off the track of being a good kid in high school, going to med school, getting married and having like 2.5 children because there's this kind of like loose cannon confusing child. And you know, when parents have that view, it kind of shows up in the kids. So like I'd get kind of like left out of stuff because it'd be like, oh well, it's like a girl thing and you're like not really a girl. Or I remember like going to camp and having people be like straight up like, do you want to be a boy? And I was like, no. It's like literally I'm just like sitting here playing with a Rubik's Cube or like eating. I'm like halfway with a spoon in my mouth and they're just like, do you want to be a boy? And I'm like, where? In terms of like other parts of Asian Americanness, I remember when I first discovered K-pop and specifically like boy bands in K-pop, and this is going to sound bad until I explain it, but before then I had never seen Asian men be represented as hot. They could be hot and masculine or hot and feminine or like cool in a way that wasn't just like the nerd. It's so helpful to see that like it can be done. 2014-year-old, 23-year-old me brain. It was literally the first time I ever ran into anything like that. It meant a lot. It kind of just started like gears going. I remember that's when my partner at the time also was like, you know, we could just go to the men's section and get you men's clothes. Like you don't have to wear women's clothes. Like you don't have to keep trying to like shove yourself into this container that you don't like.
Growing up Asian American has not super impacted my journey, but it has impacted the way I look at media because we do see non-binary representation in the media now. We're starting to see it slowly but surely. It's not a lot, but we're seeing it. But how many of those are Asian American? We already struggled with looking for Asian American representation, at least living in this Western country. Every single Asian American representation I see out there, I would cling to it constantly. And now, even rarer, I feel like I want to celebrate more and more non-binary Asian representation, not just in America, but anywhere. There's very few of it out there, but seeing it out there, it gives me a euphoric kind of feeling that could open the doors for so many people. We need more of it because baseline people say, oh, it's just, you know, it's a cool thing. Yay. To a lot of us, this is a huge, huge deal. To me, it's ridiculously huge. Seeing representation now just makes me more excited because I didn't have that growing up. Even if I was surrounded by a community that was very diverse, a lot of Asian people, seeing that kind of like representation highlighted and put on a platform, it just hits differently.
I definitely feel like growing up Asian American, for at least in my family, the Korean American culture, and especially I think growing up in the Korean immigrant church, really heavily pushed these gender roles in particular ways of like cisgender expression on me. I'm like the oldest child in my family, so I got a lot of oldest daughter stuff. You know, even now I'm actually not out to my parents. I was kind of hoping to talk to them about it before graduation, but I think I was really stressed out by a lot of other stuff. You know, if my parents like want to know about it or they show any interest in learning, you know, I'd be interested, but I came out to them about like 4 years ago, and they haven't really shown any interest in watching more queer things or learning how to like be a parent of a queer person. I feel like I talked to them a lot about what's going on in my life, a lot of which is centered around BIPOC, like cutie BIPOC, so like queer, trans, Black, Indigenous, people of color spaces, and they don't seem like particularly interested in the fact that I'm queer or anything. And maybe it's them trying not to stigmatize it, but I would like to see a little bit more engagement with them.
Not a lot of them know. My extended family mostly does not know. I have cousins that know. I have a lot of people around me that know and are supportive, but it's not really family per se. Some of them know, but they don't really understand, and I don't want to confront people and push back when I'm misgendered because it's not always a safe time for me to do so. I don't want to deal with the pushback because my mental health can't take it. In my personal life, however, I have a lot of like support, cis allies, cis friends. Online is where I think my social circle of like queer and not cis folks are, and they will remind me constantly that like what I'm feeling is, you know, it's not fair and I'm allowed to be angry at things that happen. Well, in real life, sometimes I feel like voicing my struggles is not the same because nobody can really understand. It's good to have a circle of people that understand you. Every time I meet like somebody who's non-binary, and especially someone that just goes exclusively by they them, I want to cling to that person and be like, you are now part of my social circle, please stay.
I mean, I owe how well adjusted I am, I think, in my identity and how relatively easy the transition and change was to the people in my life. My family being extremely supportive. And my parents had a really hard time with pronouns at the beginning, and not because they had a problem with the pronouns. They just like couldn't remember them to save their life or remember my new name to save their life, but I know they're trying. They try super hard. Yeah. This one is climbing a screen. And I have, you know, a really close group of friends, some of which I've been friends with since 4th grade, some since high school, some since college, some since right after college. All of them just immediately jumped on whatever I needed, did whatever research they needed to do, did some practicing outside of it, would correct people if it like was obvious that I didn't have the spoons anymore to correct people. Definitely at the beginning you feel like it's really silly to correct people. When people misgender you, it's like getting like slapped across the face, and it's really confusing because you're like, it's just a word. Like, why is this word such a problem? Sorry, that's Moose. Moose is you know, as you as you go along in your journey, not that you get more lax, but you get more comfortable in your identity to be able to call out people yourself and also kind of pick and choose your battles. Is it worth correcting in this moment, or is it 5-second interaction with a stranger fine to just leave? And in terms of work, I had friends at work and coworkers who jumped to get the name change through, even though it wasn't a legal name change, which at the time like no one knew you can do. Like, there are other trans people at my company who couldn't get their name changed because they said it had to be a legal change. What they found out is that like the system name, like what I see every day, that part can be changed. The part that couldn't be changed was like HR information, and that was fine. The shortened version of my legal name, which is technically unisex, is very feminine and reads as feminine, and just seeing that every day was really hard. So that had a friend and like my manager above him help me with announcing to the team, had like people on the team do research and like ask really thoughtful questions, and also ask me if it was okay to ask me those questions. And only after I had offered, people had pronouns to their emails. So just like everyone at the company did so much to make it feel like, one, it wasn't a big deal, two, that I was supported.
I don't know if my family is supportive. I feel like you should know the answer to that question. So the answer is probably not. I talk about a lot of stuff with them. Or, you know, like we were watching Iron Chef the other day and I didn't know Kristen Kish was on it. I follow her on Instagram. I was like, oh, I love Kristen. She's like queer. She's so awesome. I save photos of her to bring to my barber to get haircuts. And my family's just like dead silent. And I was like, isn't it so great that you're watching a show with a queer Korean American? And they're just like, I think for my parents, they can be very selective about the kind of media that they engage with. And so for me, because I'm a person who consumes a lot of media, I'm just like, let the gay agenda slowly make its way to you with all this gay TV. But yeah, I mean, I'm out to my entire family is queer and they all have said that they're supportive since then. But I really think that I'm someone who understands actions more so than words. And so I would really love it if my parents got involved with like a P flag thing. There's also a group called CARP, which is Korean American Rainbow Parents, that I know a couple of my friends are involved in. So I would love to see them do stuff like that. I've mentioned it to my parents, but I don't think they're very interested. I think if you asked my parents if they were supportive of me, they would say, yeah. And I would be like, yeah, but like, how are you supportive of me as like a queer person? And they'd be like, we're supportive. And I'd be like, so like, do you do anything? And they would just be like, I mean, do I have to? And I'd be like, it would mean a lot to me if you did.
It's just help and support non-binary people, you know, like listen to them, take them seriously. Don't just say like, oh, they're they them, and then not go through the work of actually like reprogramming your brain into they them, or even reprogramming your brain into not just depending on the presentation, because not all non-binary people look non-binary. There's no non-binary look, and most of the non-binary looks are skinny white people. We're just gonna say that. It's like, so that's the example of what non-binary looks like, but there's all types of shapes and sizes and ethnicities and presentations of non-binary, and none of it have to do with how feminine or masculine they look.
If they state their pronouns, use those pronouns. Don't try to be funny and be like, well, I identify as a helicopter. That is exactly word for word something somebody has said in like Twitch streams or other similar things like that. You know, it's not a funny joke. It doesn't show respect. It's not even a clever or witty kind of joke. If you accidentally slip up on people's pronouns, that's okay. Simply apologize, or you don't even have to apologize, just like quickly correct yourself and then move on. Because for me, that's happened in real life, where I would be referred to as she, her, and then they would simply correct it to they, them. They would say whatever sentence they said, but replace it with they or them and move on. And that's all there is to it, really. You don't need to make a big scene out of it. I don't expect some like overbearing cheesy apology or some huge scene, you know?
You don't want the person to be like, oh my god, I'm so sorry, I'm a bad, or like make a big deal of it, but you also don't want to be like, oh, whatever, it's not important. It is important, and this is why it's important. And if you want to still have a relationship with me and see me more, I can't stay here very long if I'm just going to be misgendered all weekend. Like, you know, like if I went to go see my family, I remember there are times where I left early. Like I was like, I have to go home, I can't be here. And that kind of sunk it in. It also helped once I like picked the new name, and also when I kind of told them that like they can, instead of they them pronouns, use he him pronouns. They can get their head around he him pronouns a lot easier than they them pronouns, which is better, but it's still not like exactly where I feel.
It's also admirable when another person corrects your pronouns for you. So people do that. Friends and Twitch mods like in my streams do that. I even have a special they command in my chat for that. Yeah, it's just a huge relief. I don't mind correcting, but it is just nice to see that and know that you have friends that help you along the way. And when I actually see others doing that in front of me, I have more respect for them as well too. So it's just as like this mutual respect.
Drop your assumptions at the door. I will say this over and over again until I'm blue in the face. Do not assume someone's gender because of how they look. If they wear dresses, if they wear makeup, don't assume. You shouldn't have to think that what you see, everything around you is related to a gender. Language is gendered already. We get it. We have gender reveals, which are really, really dumb, honestly. I don't like them. Because there's no point in them. This is one big thing I have to get over myself. When somebody misgenders me, I should not apologize. You'll notice this pattern if you've ever interacted with a non-binary person. You might notice that they'll say, oh, I'm sorry, my pronouns are not so-and-so, it's they, them. They should not be apologizing for their existence. You are the one that should take accountability for assuming someone's pronouns. Situations like that happen, you tell that person in front, you don't apologize, it's my fault for assuming your gender. What you do is you try to do that with everybody you meet. Try to do that. Introduce yourself with your name like a normal person and your gender pronouns. It's so easy. It's literally so easy when meeting new people. You should not feel like your discomfort at being corrected takes precedence over the discomfort of the person you just misgendered. If it happened to you, you would understand. Just put yourself in that person's shoes real quick and you'll absolutely get it.
Practicing those things when the person isn't around is really important, because it means like when you get in those situations and you're not super thinking, or you're kind of drunk, or you're really tired, that your brain has actually done the work to replace those pronouns and those names.
I just think actually respecting people's pronouns, making spaces an actively safe space where it's not just, if you see someone being misgendered, it's not just the person who's being misgendered who's having to be like, actually my pronouns are they this, but don't assume you can always speak for other people. But like, if you need to take that person who's misgendering other people aside and talk to them and be like, hey, you have done this every time we've hung with this person, and I am gonna let you know that that's not okay. And I think sometimes just like white people can talk to white people about stuff, honestly, I think that cis people can also talk to cis people about some things. I definitely notice which of my cis friends are actual like trans allies. I can tell which of you are actually, you know, talking about all of the horrible anti-trans legislation that is happening in the US. I know which of you are talking about like ways we cannot support like JK Rowling. I know who wants to, and like I said, I'm an actions instead of words kind of person. And so I know people who also like that really vibes with the way that they show their activism. I think it really makes a huge difference, because not only do I know that you're a safe person, but I know that you are out there making other spaces safe for people as well. Getting things passed in your state, such as using a non-binary gender marker on your license. I live in Washington state, and so you can do that in Washington. I do need to renew my passport soon. I do intend to have that on my passport, just like an X gender marker. This is like a whole other topic, but I actually helped participate in this academic study for non-binary folks. Last summer, I interviewed a lot of non-binary people about how they felt about it. Some people didn't feel like it was that important. Some people were like, actually, it is super important. Just know that there are many ways to support non-binary people, that we do not all agree, and that we are not a monolith. You know, we're all really different.
Your comfort matters more when you're trying to figure yourself out. Your comfort is what matters. You don't have to change your style. You don't have to become androgynous to prove that you are non-binary. You have nothing to prove to anyone. You don't have any boxes to fill. There is no time constraint. It's never too late. Everything I do should feel right to me. I shouldn't have to change the way I look. Or if you feel like you need to change the way you look, do it. Go for it. That is all you've got to do. Express yourself and feel good about it.
I have been there, and I know the struggle, so just know that you're actually not alone. All of the happiness that it brings me today is the result of a lot of work. If you are on a journey of exploring where you are with your gender, there actually is no endpoint that you have to get to. If you are identifying as cis and you're like, maybe I'm not, if you end up identifying as cis, that's totally fine. What's important is that you let yourself explore and that you imagined something different for yourself. Because the thing about sexuality and gender identity is that they're very fluid. And so even the way that I identify now, I might not be identifying like next year or in a couple years or in 10 years. But what I am open to is the possibility of things changing, not being afraid of that change, but rather embracing it. I know it sounds fake, but it is possible. If you're like, this is not a reality for where I live or for people that are around me, then I totally get it. And I'm not going to make you feel bad about where you live or the people that are around you, including your family members or your friends. But I do want to let you know that there are other spaces on the internet, you know, could be a safe space where it could be a little bit more anonymous. There are a lot of places like online communities, Discord servers. It can be like Twitch communities. You can come to our Twitch communities, you know, where hopefully really active safe spaces. My channel, I really prioritize like cutie BIPOC, inclusivity, just values around like joy, creativity, freedom. I also have like really strong social justice values. I just finished a master's in social work. And so I'm literally a social justice nerd that they gave a degree to. So yeah, I just want to let you know that I see you and I hear you. I know that phrases like it gets better are very corny, but all of this that you're thinking about and processing right now, it's allowing yourselves to be transformed by just the possibilities of being something new or something different. That is one of the most sacred things I think you can do for yourself. If you learn to love yourself through the process, if you feel like you're not somebody who loves yourself, because that was definitely a journey that I had to go on, it'll always be worth it in the end. And if you take any small bit of comfort from this video, then I will have done my job. Because all I care about is making sure that, you know, other folks feel safe to explore who they are and what they want to do.
I would say if you're more of like a do a lot of research type person, there's a lot of good like resources, gender study things. If you have friends in the queer community, talking to them and their experience can help. Maybe they'll like say something. Even just like having friends where you're like, hey, can you just call me by these things for like a day and just see how you feel about it? Even before the non-binary part, I put on a binder. A binder is a garment that trans masc people use to flatten their chest, basically, to like masculize their chest. Actually, on on Twitter, like ran into this thing where like not many people know that, so they thought I was like talking about like a 3-ring binder, and that kind of just started a spiral of like, if other people weren't expecting something on me, where do I actually sit? Which I think is why we have a lot more non-binary people after the pandemic than before. Not that the pandemic isn't still going, I should say lockdown. After lockdown than before lockdown, because suddenly it was very clear what you did for other people and what you actually did for yourself, because you're just home with yourself. Kind of breaking down like, what are you doing because of the expectations of others, and what are you doing because that's actually what you want to be doing? Going kind of through those thought processes helps a lot. If you don't have close people that, or like it's not safe to do this kind of exploration, a super easy thing you can do that I remember reading on like a Reddit forum, also Reddit's like queer non-binary trans community is like pretty good, I would say. I lived on the female to male forum. Go to Starbucks or a place where they call out your name, give them a different name, like a name that you might want to be called by, and then when it gets called, notice how you feel about it. Do you feel better? A lot of times when it comes to like trans or non-binary things, a lot of emphasis is put on the dysphoria part, right? There's heightened discomfort that is suddenly relieved. Being able to look at yourself in the mirror or have someone talk to you and use pronouns and like actually feel like they're talking to you. Notice on whether or not suddenly like there's a major euphoria, or maybe it feels like there's like a static in the back of your head that's suddenly, you know, gone. That's part of it. And the thing is like, it can change, right? Gender is fluid. If you come out as non-binary and later go back on being non-binary, I know there's some people who will fault you for that, but really they shouldn't, because like it's really a journey. You know, I was a lesbian at some point. Obviously, I don't identify as that now because I don't identify as a woman, so I can't be like a woman-loving woman person. Things change and people change, and they should change. Changing is good. It means you're growing. Be patient. It's worth it, because you are more comfortable with your own company.
Keep learning, keep researching, talking to other people to share your thoughts and ideas. And I know there are arguments online, especially like on Reddit. I like to research and see different opinions, different thoughts and arguments and viewpoints. Engage in the things that you love, your hobbies. Just focus on being like the best person that you can be. And I think that's essentially what being non-binary is for me. My whole life I've always strived to be better and better, and you know, I have goals and ambitions that I aim to achieve, and so I try to rid myself of whatever may limit that. So it's a gradual process. It's various things, right? So gender would be one of those things that have gotten in the way in my past experiences. So it's a matter of like crossing those things off of your list that
contribute to your limiting form as a human being.
That way we can take over the world, basically. Thank you to my friends Okoyim, Heejin, and Mars for being a part of this video, taking the time to share your thoughts. I hope this video gave you a better understanding of what it means to be non-binary and how it means something different to each individual non-binary identifying person. Yeah, thanks for taking the time to listen. This is my YouTube channel, so you can find me here. I also stream on Twitch. I'm on Instagram and Twitter, Facebook, even though I don't use it that much. But please be sure to check out and support the friends in this video.
You can find me here on YouTube at Mars X Mahal and the same on TikTok. I do Japanese and Korean covers and a little bit of English. And on TikTok, I do gender rants and I talk about J-pop and K-pop, and I sometimes rant about the idol industry because there's a lot to be said. So if you like stuff like that, you can follow me there.
You can find me on Twitch under Okodium. You could also find me on Twitter under Okodium Moves. And yeah, I just kind of variety streamer. So that's it.
I do stream on Twitch. I do also hang out in Abby's community a lot, so hopefully you'll see me there. But I do also stream. My Twitch is Heejin_A. My Twitter and my Instagram are Heejin_TV. I also have my own Discord server if you want to come join that too. It also has my stream schedule on there. Yeah, well, thanks for watching this video, and I hope to see you around.
That's it.
Bye.
That's it. Peace.